Now is the time to ask questions of Evan, and you can use the Q&A function in the Zoom tools to do that. Um, I see a good point being made by AZ in the Q&A, and if Amir, if you can let AZ into the session, I'd sure like to talk about their definition, their understanding of lived experience.
Yeah, well, that's happening. Beck had a question about certifications do you recommend
Yeah,
responders have? I don't necessarily know if I would recommend additional certifications. I think additional training and always learning how to improve your skill set and knowledge is important. I mean, you can get certifications in like mental health first aid. There's a lot of different trainings out there. Um, I say this because there is a worry is yes, I want to professionalize the field and, have its place, but I don't also want to push it towards, well, why not just have these people built into like behavioral health clinicians or more education? Because I think sometimes that's been proposed almost as a pathway of like that's the next progression. Um, so I think it's important for companies, as this profession, grows and professionalizes and whatever way it is, I think it's important in the now for companies to kind of have opportunities to grow. So like a peer one, someone with 1 year of experience, a peer two, and having 20 hours of additional mental health training, and a peer three, and then maybe a peer supervisor. So I think opportunities to grow and develop within um, the field of being a peer definitely important. Yeah, there are some additional certifications people can get, but yeah, I wouldn't want to push it more towards, this thing of more kind of standard pathway of now we're getting a college education and a degree and this and that, because that's not necessarily always the point or important.
that was absolutely the sole path to being uh, uh, employed in community mental health and in addiction health in anything other than a janitorial role up until the late 1980s. And there was a lot of peers in both, working in both, that wanted to be involved expressing their lived experience. But no, the only path was to go back to college, which was, of course, just a dead end because criminal backgrounds and lack of money and lack of family support, etc. AZ, are you with us still?
Yeah,
Great. Can you make your point about empathy?
yeah. I think it's just a really great way to connect with people, especially in crisis. I work with mobile crisis response team in Oregon, and we, work alongside clinicians, and you know, sometimes people connect with clinicians, sometimes they connect with peers, but I always tell people different roles, same goal. We're both there to support our community. We're both there to, connect with the person who's in crisis. And, you know, with lived experience, sometimes like we get to go a little bit deeper than clinicians do with, how their roles are a little bit different than ours. So it's a great way for us to build that connection and hopefully like serve, you know, the person in crisis and meet them where they're at.
Well, thanks, AZ. That's a great point. Evan, do you have some thoughts?
Yeah, no, I appreciate that point, and I definitely agree. As they kind of put in the chat, you can't teach empathy in a textbook, and working in this field, I've met so many quote unquote highly educated people who just don't have the skills to connect on that level with people that people without a degree have been able to. So, as I kind of said, I think it's a lot of times it's about who you are and how you show up first. And, you know, um, yeah, empathy and worldview, those things are so extremely important and kind of the most essential pieces.
Now, one thing you didn't mention in your talk is that you were a big part of Denver Star for a long time, and you must have been in a lot of hiring discussions. And how do you know when you're meeting someone in that employment hiring situation, whether they are a person who has empathy, has compassion? Is there any tells?
Um, I mean, I think, asking the right questions in an interview is always important too. And giving people the space to kind of to show that they have those things. So, definitely asking about um people's biases or how they show up in the world or just forming questions that kind of really give people the opportunity to show some of those skills. And then I think it's just reading people sometimes too of just, how they're speaking, their tone, their can you see the passion? Can you hear the passion? Can you hear, not just what they're saying sometimes, but like how people are saying the things as well.
Well, let's bring in Anthony and get a question from Anthony from the Q&A. Amir?
Yes, sir. Bring Anthony in.
Hey, Anthony, welcome.
Sorry about
Welcome,
that.
Anthony.
Thank you, man. How you doing?
Doing well.
Good, good. I don't want to take up too much of your time, but I want to appreciate just the platform and the dialogue. And because hearing your story, it kind of reminds me of my own, or kind of like similar to a lot of people that we go through. It's like you get in a position where the peer is kind of put like we're like the sidekick or like we're the aide or like the maid or the CNA type of situation. Um, what moment Um, if you have one, what moment did you that switch for you to make you invest in yourself to like with empathy? Because like sometimes the reason you want to help is because you can see that person that you can see your own broken heart in that person. Like you can see your own addiction, you can see your own betrayal of family members. So like I can empathize with that person. I know why he's drunk because his wife just died. I know why he's addicted to cocaine because he still has issues from childhood. What moment helped you realize to pay attention to that? And that is something that's going to aid you to go forward and be better, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, as much as I struggled with my family growing up, my mom, kind of I saw and learned from her, she always saw people as people and just seeing the humanity in people, I think is really important. We live in a culture that it's easy to live in our own bubble and look the other way and kind of make these walls so we don't have to interact or feel that pain. Because it's hard to feel the pain when you're looking at someone on the street who's experiencing homelessness or distress and, you know, to actually see that person and to not feel something is, I think it is incredibly hard. So I think a lot of people have created these barriers so they can kind of look past those things. So I think seeing people as who they are is and seeing the humanity in everyone is extremely important. Um, but I think one of the things that drives me too is just, the pain I experienced in my life with depression and my substance use and knowing that I don't want other people to experience those things, but having found a different path for myself, knowing that there's so much more possible in this world than a lot of times we're led to believe. And sometimes it just takes one person to step up that can really, make a difference in in a life. And so I had people at times who really kind of helped me step onto a different pathway. And I think, you know, that inspires me to want to do that from someone else because I just think, at 12 years old, if I had a really great therapist or someone to really sit down and talk with, could I have learned to express my emotions and deal with my mental health concerns at a younger age? Possibly, but I just didn't have that person in my life. So, yeah, I want to be that space for people because I think, I believe so deeply in that everyone has the potential to thrive and find some sort of happiness.
It seems that part of the motivation to do this peer work is to continue to become a better person, to continue to explore yourself and your own pain and to as Anthony says, see the heartbreak in someone else.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Definitely the best question of the day, Anthony. I'd like to bring in Jeff. Jeff is doing some ice-breaking work somewhere where they have not been able to accept his application yet. Amir, can you bring Jeff into the conversation?
Yes, Jeff. Yes.
Jeff Dunn.
Uh,
And
as you're doing that, yeah, I saw a question in the chat on lived experience. How does this work with teams that have peers with so-called professionals? Yeah, I think it's, a hard dynamic to balance. And I think a lot of that should be on the company bringing in the staff to build this space for this interaction and this team and, giving the peers the space to thrive and provide. And then, also making sure that as you're bringing in peers, everyone else understands their worth, value, and importance. It's really hard to try and navigate, that as a peer coming into a space of kind of, doing the work, working with people, managing what's going on with you, helping them, and then also try to manage like, teaching professionals or having almost to prove yourself. And I think that's a hard thing to do is to have to prove yourself um in your field. And I don't think that's as much as you can avoid that or have a space where you can avoid that. I think that's really important.
a lot of similarities to racism in that the persons coming into a workplace not only have to figure out the job, but they often are the only person of color in the job, and then they have to answer all the annoying questions, etc. Do you see some parallels there?
Yeah, no, I definitely see some parallels of yeah, exactly. You can come in and you can be, certified as a peer support specialist, but um some people unfortunately might look down on that as the world changes, or not think of that as valuable experience or
Audio now
again,
unmuted. Type your question in
kind
your
of hierarchies our world are set on of, well, I have a degree or I have a master's, therefore I'm a step or two above you. And it's not always blatant. As I kind of said, there's a lot of microaggressions that can happen within that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Jeff, are you with us?
Jeff is here, waiting for him to unmute.
Hey, Jeff,
Enter.
can
Audio
you come?
now unmuted. Type your question here. Edit.
Hello?
Hello, Jeff. You had a question in the Q&A. Do you want to tell us what's going on with you?
Okay, well, yeah, first of all, well, I'm blind myself because of attempted suicide 26 years ago. I shot myself and missed, thankfully.
Okay.
But anyway, I got my peer support. I'm a, certified peer support, and I was talking to this shelter. They've never had one before, peer support, and I've been talking to them, and I know a couple people on the board even, so at least I know some people there, but they sound pretty excited to have me there. But I was just wondering, have you got any pointers? Like you said, you'd been somewhere before that they'd never had a
Field
peer, so
on
they
the
didn't
left
even know what
parent,
to
a
do about
left
it.
and right parent has joined the
Have you
meeting.
got some, ideas? I mean, they're, like I said, they're excited to have me, but got some ideas that might help me, get started there and all that.
Breaking the ice with a new organization. Evan, what do you think?
Um, yeah, I think, um, I think on the company side, if they're excited, hopefully that they'll put some things in place. But um, definitely doing the work with people. I think, just showing up and using your experience, and really connecting with the people and the clients and helping them, that's gonna be um, great in showing, what you can do and what you're capable of. But then um, I think finding the people in the organization, who want to kind of support you and who want to be an ally and kind of like a cheerleader as well, I think, because I think there's always those people too who they get it. And as the world changes, there's a lot of people who get it and they understand the importance. So finding those connections as well. And if things happen, I guess, finding ways to kind of sit with that discomfort and finding ways to, address things that might happen with people. But it can be challenging, but um, I think it's extremely rewarding too to not only, work with clients and help them, but also thinking about, you know, firsthand, I'm expanding the field. Like I'm teaching a social worker or a doctor or a nurse or a front desk staff, and changing the uh, clients I work with, but there's the potential to kind of change and open the worldview of all the other people in that organization as well.
Right. Well, and I
Proceed
got
to
one
question
good person on my
master
team is the
2:18 p.m.
the
question.
director is the guy that I've been talking to. He's the director of the whole thing, and so he's really excited about it because he knows my story and everything I've been through, and and I even got to meet a couple of people that live there, and I don't know, they, people like, the people who know you've been there before, they're more likely to listen to you than someone who's been to college and learned everything out of a book. So I don't know, I'm looking forward to being able to, have an impact on some people and hopefully, help them see, hopefully I'm help you see that you don't have to go as far as I went before you can turn things around. Um, but yeah,
Thanks,
I was
Jeff.
pretty excited for the chance, so we'll see what happens.
Yeah, no, I'm excited for you, and yeah, using that experience, I think is going to be great for people to hear, and it's wonderful. You got another chance, and you're still here, and you're using your experience to help other people. So I love to hear that, and I appreciate you doing the work.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm glad I got a chance to do it. Yeah, I got it real hard for other people. Like I said, I know where I was. I don't want anybody to go there themselves. So
Best of luck, Jeff. Let's
thanks.
hear from Lucas G. Lucas has a question for Evan. Amir, can you let Lucas in? And while we're waiting for Lucas to come in, Evan, Letitia has asked about imposter syndrome, and you mentioned that in your talk, but could you unpack that a little bit? Maybe people aren't familiar with the term.
Hello.
Well, hey, Lucas, there you are. We'll
I
get
can
back
wait.
to Letitia's
I
question in
can.
a sec.
Okay.
Go ahead, Lucas.
Sure. Thanks for your time. Evan, thanks for sharing. I appreciated that, the vulnerability. One thing you mentioned real quick that I wanted some clarification on. I'm not necessarily sure the direction you were going to take it in, but you touched on something. I've been a part of the Evanston Crisis Alternative Response Program here right out of Chicago for 2 years. Been a responder on the program. I'm a current responder. Thought a lot about some of the stuff you were talking about. Particularly one thing that stuck out was you mentioned kind of a need for having those internal levels of experience be established as people get more experience in the field. And I didn't necessarily know if you were speaking in terms of things you'd seen, particularly in programs you've been involved with, or a need that you see. I've always thought it would be kind of useful as I've gotten immersed in this work to see as people progress, kind of having um, different opportunities be presented to people based on whether they've gotten years of experience, just to kind of have some sense of, they've been in this work for multiple years. And I guess I wanted to hear you speak more to whether you've seen that or whether that was just a need you were speaking to, and kind of you elaborating on why you see that to be important. Because I think it would be pretty interesting to hear you talk about.
Yeah, I think, it's definitely, I think it's a need, something that I see as a need. I I haven't experienced it myself, but I've seen some companies, kind of start to do that as like a peer one, a peer two, a peer three. I think, opportunities for growth are definitely important within the field. If as people can kind of move forward and progress um, within their career. But yeah, I've seen some companies kind of do that. When I was working for this organization, ex with people experiencing homelessness, like they had that kind of scale for, they started that, for case managers, kind of like a case manager one, and then a two was, this many years of experience with more learning. And then also with that would come, kind of additional pay as well. So I think, those things can be important for people to grow, gives people pride in the work they do, but, opportunities to grow, opportunities to make more money. So I think, those things are important for people who, doesn't mean you necessarily have to do those things, but it's good to have that option to, to grow if that's something you want to do.
Thanks, Lucas. Getting back to Letitia's question of imposter syndrome. Want to unpack that term a little bit for me, Evan?
Yeah, I mean, imposter syndrome is kind of feeling like almost like you're wearing a mask, or, you're not what you say you are, or even if you have, the lived experience or the credentials, kind of having this fear of like, I'm showing up, but it's not, um, I'm not really the person that um I said or I need to be. And I think, some of that is hard too, because there's this um, kind of idea that's floating around that's used quite often of kind of like uh, there's always someone who has it worse off, So um, with like mental health, sometimes you'll hear people be like, "Well, hey, at least you're not a starving, person in Africa." And it's like, yeah, maybe that's true, but that doesn't mean the things that I went through are any less, hard or valuable for me. It's definitely different situations. So, um, yeah, even for me, sometimes it's like, yes, I struggled with my mental health and substance misuse for such a long time, but I grew up in a place where I had the privilege I could go to college, and I was very academically gifted as a person. And so, sometimes, yeah, it's, hard to not hear that voice of like, oh, you didn't suffer long enough, or your struggle wasn't hard enough. But yeah, I think, uh just kind of, believing in yourself and doing the work. And yeah, sometimes our brain is our own worst enemy. I think every single person has a value in this world and valuable experiences, and we all have something to offer.
Well, it seems like empathy is an essential quality, but also authenticity is an essential quality that you have to feel. You, the practitioner, have to feel that you're a real person And in order to, as Anthony said a few minutes ago, feel the brokenheartedness in someone else and be able to be authentic, you have to believe you're real. And it sounds a little a little silly when we talk about it, but I think that's a feeling people really have. They may not be real. Well, Evan, we're just about to the end of our conversation. We got one last question from um, maybe Letitia has a lot of questions today, but she's saying that Oregon's really the state. A lot of people here today from the state of Oregon. That the credentialing that came available through the peer support specialists uh, has really been very important in opening up a lot of doors here. And it's what's your thoughts on credentialing for mobile crisis workers? We've sort of glanced upon that subject a little bit today. It's coming. There are people working on it. We're not quite there yet.
Um, what do you mean, like credentialing for like mobile crisis specifically?
Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
no, I think that's definitely coming, and I think, um, as this field expands and grows, there's going to be a lot of different opportunities. Again, being a peer could mean a lot of different things. I have lived experience with, my mental health and substance misuse. I'm not a person who experienced, homelessness. So, maybe there's different like pathways to even kind of branch out further of like I'm a peer, specifically in my lived experience with experiencing homelessness or incarceration. Um, so I think there's different, avenues or credentialing and pathways that I think could be really beneficial to again, definitely kind of um, expand the field. But um, yeah, I mean, I definitely think it's definitely different. Again, working with someone in a state of crisis versus working with someone, who's came into an office to talk or kind of in a more established, defined area. So yeah, again, when I was working with people directly in emergency department and very high levels of distress, that's gonna, look different than working with someone in the office. So, it can definitely kind of need, different skill sets or different ways of working with people. But again, that lived experience or what you've been through is still going to be that kind of key underlying base. But yeah, um, the whole alternative to police and mobile services field as it grows too. It's kind of changing the game for everyone across the board. Um, because there's definitely a difference of EMT being an EMT and an EMT who's specifically working with people in crisis. And the same thing would go for, mental health therapists and peer support specialists. So, yeah, excited to kind of see what the future holds.